What's up guys, I'm Anthony White from the Card Guys media team in my own channel Top Tier Yu-Gi-Oh! And last weekend I got 5th place at the Charlotte, North Carolina Regional with Infernoid Zoodiacs, but I only played 40 cards, so no lawn mowing. And so today I'm going to try to give you guys a really good deck profile and tournament report, so at the end let me know what you think down in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so let's get into this profile. And so like I said, I played 40 card Infernoid Zoodiacs, and the reason I chose this deck over the lawn mowing version was that I wanted to be able to see my Void, Vanishment, Feast, and then my Lunalight combo a little bit more often. There was always the problem in a 60 card build that you could mill something like Fusion Substitute or Black Sheep, or just really any of your Zoodiac cards, and that would ruin that combo. You could mill Jet, and that would ruin Void Feast. And so I didn't want to risk that for maybe having strong lawn mowing mills. I just wanted to directly get to my Void Feast and my Lunalight plays. And the really cool thing is that they can sort of feed off of each other. So if you resolve Feast, you can summon level 3s, make Invoker, and then do your Lunalight play. Or you can do your Lunalight play and draw on the Void, Vanishment, or Feast. And so the fact that those two work so well together and that they are so powerful, I found that it was probably better to just cut 20 cards out the deck and then play this. But also being able to see my side deck cards more often really helped me a lot because the meta is so diverse. I wanted to be able to side for a lot of different matchups and then be able to draw them. Versus in a 60 card build, you can't really side a lot of different cards because if you only side 1 or 2 cards for a certain matchup, you probably won't draw it. But then also, there's a contradiction in the 60 card decks between what you want to mill and then what you want to draw, especially in Infernoids, because most of your deck is cards that you don't want to draw. You don't want to draw Infernoids, you don't want to draw Snow, you want to mill them, but you want to draw Barrage and draw Vanishment, Feast, and those cards. And so it doesn't always work out that way. Like, you can draw in the cards you want to mill and mill cards you want to draw, and I just did not want to deal with that, especially when I had the best 2 plays myself. But let's get started with the main deck. So first we have 3 Decatrons, and this is the best normal summon in the deck. It becomes all of your other Infernoids, the tuner. I mean, there's not really much more you can ask a singular normal summon to do. Like, this card is just insane. And one thing I like to do was that if I had a really good combo or play, I would normal summon this first, and then send the Deviati, that way I can negate monster effects, which would stop my opponent from using any hand traps. Next we have 3 Harmodic. Once per turn, it can pop monsters on the board. Really good for clearing your own Tiara off the field so that you can special summon more of your Infernoid monsters, but also for forcing Tridents and other monster effects, and really just clearing the way for you to make your larger plays. 2 Patrouilla. Once per turn, you can destroy spell or traps. This can be really good for getting rid of your opponent's back row to once again clear the way for your plays, but it's also good for destroying your own imagination. We need to get it off the board so that you can do more damage, but I'll talk more about that later. 2 Anunku and 2 Deviati. These are the main boss monsters of the deck. Anunku destroys monsters and negates spell or traps. Deviati negates monsters and destroys spell or traps. So they both negate the opposite of what they destroy, and that's the main thing to remember. It's important to realize though that they don't have to tribute themselves. You can tribute any monster you control for those negation effects. And so a lot of times, if you can just like set any other monster, like normal summon any other monster, you can just tribute that instead, so you can negate effects and keep your big guys on board, which is really important. Because it doesn't really matter how strong they are if you have to tribute it to negate something. So then for the 1-ofs, we played 1 Atandel, 1 Sidesimus, 1 Jet, 1 Pyramace, and then 1 Antra. And all of these are so important to the deck. Like, you don't want to play a lot of them because they're really situational, but the fact that you have them in your deck makes your deck a lot better. And so the back 3 here, your big guys, they all have effects in the battle phase, and then they contribute monsters for the DD Crow effect in either player's turn. The fact that they do it in either player's turn is really important. And so Atandel can attack twice, so he lets you put massive damage on the board. Sidesimus, at the end of the battle phase, he can banish a card on the field, so it's non-targeting, and it banishes stuff, which is always really good. And then, while Jet doesn't have the best effect on board, it's really good for your Void Feast play, which I'm going to get into later as well. Now, Antra and Pyramace both actually have really relevant on-field effects. And so Pyramace was really good because I expected a decent amount of Paleo, and what this does is you can target set cards on the field, not just spell or traps, but any set card. Although it usually is a spell or trap, but you shuffle it back to the deck and your opponent cannot chain that card. So it's pretty much a Night Beam, and that's really, really good, especially against Paleozoics. And then we have the Antra, which can bounce face-up cards back to the hand. And this is really good against Metal Foes, which I played a lot of actually, because you can bounce Mithrilium back. You can also bounce back things like Dupe Frog, totally awesome to prevent their graveyard effects from triggering. But also it's a level 2, which is really relevant, because Decatron does gain the levels of the cards that it sends to the graveyard. And so there are a couple combos that utilize that. Next we have 2 Zoodiac Rat Peers, 1 Whiptail, and then 1 Lunalight Black Sheep. Again, these are for the Lunalight combo because drawing cards is really, really good. 3 Speedroid Terratops, 1 Take Tomborg, and the last 2 monsters were 1 DD Crow and 1 Max C. And so Max C was obviously good, but DD Crow is also really good because sure, most of your monsters have a DD Crow type effect, but having an actual DD Crow means you don't have to tribute your own monsters to do it. And so a lot of times you might have like a giant monster on board, but you might not want to banish something from their graveyard because you'd have to lose your monster. And so having this plus Infernoid just sort of gives you the best of both worlds. For the spell cards, you play 3 Void Banishment and 2 Void Imaginations. Triple Void Banishment is, pretty standard. Void Banishment searches your feast, it searches imagination. It's one of the best cards in the deck. But double Void Imagination is something I haven't seen very often, and so a lot of people play 0 or just 1, but I wanted to play 2 because the main problems with Void Imagination are that 1, Tiara's a really high level, and so you have to get Tiara off the board so that you can summon your other Infernoids, and then 2, it's a continuous spell card so your opponent can just answer it. And so I think having 2 Imaginations actually fixes both of those problems. And so if you use 1 Imagination and you summon your Tiara, Tiara's level 11, so it keeps you from summoning your other Infernoids. If you play another Imagination, it makes Tiara level 1, and now you can summon back all your Infernoids that you just sent to the graveyard. Now the other thing is if you have 2, you can bait 1 and then play the other one. I do that all the time. But also just seeing it more often does help because there are a lot of times where I just need to summon more Infernoid monsters, but I can't because of the level restrictions. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull out Tiara now, but you have so many other cards in your main deck that also deal with those problems. And so, like, if you have a Decatron, you can send Harmodic and then pop Tiara afterwards, summon back all your Infernoids. You can actually have Harmodic. You can have any of your Zoodiac cards and then summon Trident. That includes Terratop because that will eventually lead to you, having a Trident. So there's so many cards that you can have that are going to help you clear your board and summon all your Infernoids back after resolving Imagination. Or if there's the play where you have Imagination to lower your levels, you still need to get rid of the Imagination because it's going to have the battle damage. You could have Petrolia to pop the Imagination. Again, any of your Zoodiac stuff will help you make a Trident to pop the Imagination. And then you also have Decatron. And so again, you have all of these outs to solve the problems of Imagination. So pretty much this just sends a bunch of Infernoids from your deck to the graveyard. If you have any of these, you can usually just kill your opponent right there. So double Imagination was really, really good for me. Next we have 1 Future Fusion and 1 Fusion Substitute. And the final spell card is 1 Zoodiac Barrage. Alright, so for the traps, I played 1 Imperial Order, 2 Dimensional Barriers, and then 2 Void Feast. Imperial Order wasn't actually that good for me. I didn't draw it very often, but Dimensional Barrier was probably decent at best because I did play a lot of Metal Foe Zoodiacs, and it's not very good against Metal Foe Zoodiacs because they do have so many different ways of summoning monsters. They have their Pendulum Summon, a Fusion Summon, Xyz Summons. It's just really hard to stop them with a singular barrier. So by far, the MVP was the Void Feast, and I think every game I won, I at least resolved Feast once or twice. And so I want to talk about some of the cool things you can do with Feast. And I think the main one that most people think about is the double Decatron Jet play. So then you have the DD Crow, and then you can use these to usually send Anunku and Deviati. So that way you have 2 monster negators, 2 spell negators, or 1 monster and 1 spell negation. And so that's really hard for a lot of people to break. But there are a lot of other options as well that people don't think about. And so one of my favorite ones was that you can go Petrolia, Harmodic, and Decatron. So that way you could pop a spell card, pop a monster, and then use the Decatron depending on what you might need. And so if I was going against like Paleo, I could send another Petrolia to pop another spell or trap, or I could send Primus. Or you can also just send Antra. And then once you send Antra, Decatron's going to go up to level 3. So then you can use both of these to make an Invoker and then go into your Zoodiac plays. And then this is going to give you another level 4 for your Zoodiac plays to make a second rank 4. Something else that you can do that's really cool is you can also summon 2 Harmodics in the Antra. So that way you could pop 2 monsters, bounce a face-up card back to the hand, and then again make an Invoker. Another really interesting play is that you can go double Petrolia, pop 2 back row, go Broad Bull, search a rat, normal summon the rat, do your Lunalight combo, and then draw 2 more cards. Let's see, there are a lot of other different combinations. One thing that I did every now and then was that I would just summon in a Tundel, just so that I could double attack twice. That came up a couple of times. Or just like Scythimus and then Decatron. This was something that I did a lot of times with the second feast. And so with the first feast, I might summon like one of the other ones, like, all of those different options I just mentioned. But I might summon these 3, and then I will also send these 3, or these 2, I should say. So that would give me 5 monsters, 2 Decatron sends, and I could pop a monster spell or trap, and then I have a big monster, a big DD Crow that can banish stuff at the end of the battle phase. And so again, Void Feast was insane, and its versatility was just staggering. So let's get into the extra deck, and for the fusions, we play 1 Norden, 1 Tiara. For the synchros, we have 1 Yazi and 1 Cyframe Lord Omega. I didn't summon Cyframe Lord Omega once. Usually I do, but the levels just didn't match up for me today, or last week I should say. And there was twice where I really wanted to summon it, because the cool thing about Omega is you can summon it and then banish it so that you have more space for more levels. But my opponent didn't have cards in their hand, so I couldn't do that. Yazi came up once, and it only came up in round 9. In the final round, on the last turn in time, I summoned the Yazi, and because it can't be targeted, it was really hard for the Paleo player to deal with. And so I sort of took a page out of Invoked books. Like, I saw how Paleo was struggling to deal with the water Invoked fusion, so I decided to toss in the Yazi, because it's sort of close to the same thing. Like, this can be destroyed, unlike whatever that water fusion is, but this is still really, really good. And it forces them to make awkward plays, especially on time. 1 Invoker, 1 Totem Bird, and then 1 Levier. And then for the rank 4s, I played 1 Borbo, 1 Tiger Mortar, 2 Broad Bull, and 2 Trident. And so I really wanted a larger Zoodiac contingent because I think Trident's probably the best defensive rank 4. I just want to be able to make it more often. 1 Daigusto Emerald, and then 1 F-Zero. So Emerald goes with the Norden and the Lunalight play, obviously. But F-Zero is sort of different. And I really like this because after you shuffle back your rats and stuff after your Lunalight play, once you get another rat, this is like the next best thing to make. And it's really good because it helps you get around big monsters. And one really cool thing that I like is that you can tribute the monsters that you take for Infernoid effects. And so I might have something like this on board, right? And you can, if they have 2 monsters, you can take one of them, usually the stronger one, attack the weak monster with a Tondel, attack directly with a Tondel, attack directly with their monster, then use a Tondel's effect to tribute their monster to banish something out of their graveyard. And that's insane. Or the same thing would work with like a Sitesimus. So now let's get into the side deck. And this is where I think I won most of my matchups, because I think I sided really, really well. And so first we have 1 DD Crow, 2 Ghost Ogres, and then 2 Retaliating Seas. These are hand traps. These are all going second against anything with the Lunalight combo, because if they draw 6 cards on me, then, you know, the game is over. But also these are just good in different individual matchups as well. And so these 4 are really good against metal foes. DD Crow is good against, Paleo. It's good against Infernoid Mirrors, Lightsworn. Ghost Ogre is also pretty good against Infernoids because you can hit Vanishment. And also just hitting Decatron can disrupt plays sometimes. Retaliating Sea is good against Invoked. So these 5 hand traps are really, really versatile. And I also have the second DD Crow in the main deck. Next we have 2 Jinzos for Paleo. I don't think I drew this once. I only played 1 Paleo though, so that's, probably why. For the sided spell cards, I played 2 Void Seer and then 1 Raigeki. Raigeki was really good one round where I was able to clear my opponent's board after he went first and made a big board. But Void Seer was also really good. And the theory behind Void Seer was that I wanted more cards good going second. And this is something that is good going second, but it's also something I could discard for Void Feast. And it's also searchable by Vanishment. And so I mostly wanted this for the Paleo matchup. And so I chose this over something like a Twin Twister, because Twin Twister deals with 2 back row, but so does this. But this can also deal with Toad, and that's like the big difference. So Twin Twister is going to have to deal with back row. This can also deal with monsters. And then just considering like how strong something like a Nunku is with Void Seer, I just really want to try that out. Because, 3,000 monster that negates spells and is unaffected by card effects, pretty good. And then next for the traps in my side, these are like the best cards for sure. I played 2 anti-spell fragrances, 2 strikes, and then 1 warning. And so the main reason behind playing these was that I looked at what was topping recently. I looked last week and I saw that Infernoids had won the YCS in Denver. And so I really wanted to include these because these can negate an Infernoid summon. But then I also saw a lot of Metal Foes, and then Patrick Coben did like a Metal Foe deck profile. He didn't top. I think he went like X3 or something. But anything with Patrick Coben is going to get a lot of views, and a lot of people are going to copy that. So I knew they were going to be Infernoid Zoo, and I knew that they were going to be Metal Foe Zoo. And so this is really good against the Metal Foes. And also against 60 card decks, you got to set your lawn mowing and whatnot. So really these 5 cards are really good against all of those decks, or both of those decks. And that's what I expected most. And it was a really good assumption considering that that made up over half my matchups. And the best thing about them was adding them to the traps that I already had in the main deck. So if I had these plus like Barrier, or any of these plus Barrier, Imperial Order, or Feast, it was going to be really hard for opponents to play the game. And so this turned this deck into a really strong going first deck. And it worked out just so well for me. And so I finished 7-1-1. I lost 5 out of my 9 die rolls conveniently. Or not conveniently, but coincidentally. I played 1 PK Fire, 1 Lightsworn, 1 Fluffle, 1 60 card Infernoid Zoo, 1 Paleo, and then 4 Metal Foes. But overall, I had a lot of fun at this event. But honestly, I think most of the reasons I won were just due to studying the last week's trends in top decks. So like the fact that I sided the anti-spells, the strikes, the warning, those are huge. The fact that I had the five hand traps, that was huge. And also I felt that I managed my resources very well. I didn't make very many misplays. And so that helped a lot, obviously. But for shoutouts, I definitely want to shout out Ocean View Gaming for supporting me and just letting me borrow a lot of cards. Also shoutouts to Team Monster, to the Wild Wild West group chat. You guys know who you are. And then also the card guys. Because I wanted to show you guys that, the media team is not a bunch of scrubs. We're not just like guys who make random videos, but we're good players as well. But then also, especially in the card guys, Calvin, Tahan, and Nishaad for driving me. And they also gave me like the best playlist I could have possibly had at the time. Because like I said, I listened to a lot of music at events. And they hooked me up with a good playlist. Like the music we played on the way there was insane. It was awesome. So it got me really hyped. Kept my mental levels up all day. It's really good. So shout outs to them. And also for doing really well. Like Calvin got first, Nishaad got 16th, I think. And so as a car, like we just did really well. And finally, shout outs to Alan Dekanoff. He's one of my best friends. He came down to the event. He also helped me test a lot, so that was awesome. He also let me borrow some cards, and so shout outs to him for just being there. But like I said in the beginning, let me know what you think about this deck down in the comment section below. I'd really appreciate any sort of feedback you guys might have and how you see this deck maybe moving forward. Or whether you just prefer the 60 card build over the 40 card build, let me know. And also, be sure to like this video if you haven't already liked it. If you didn't like it, maybe watch it again. I'm sure you'll like it the second time. Guys, thanks for watching.